Hello, hello, Aderson here. This is the monthly meetup, TADUG meetup. Today is March 6th, 2019, and it is 6:30 p.m. Eastern Time. We have our regular meetup. This is the 1-year anniversary meetup. This is our 12th edition. So we have been able to stick around for a year now. Let's try to keep that going forwards. So again, thank you very much for the ones that are present here on GoToMeeting. Thank you very much if you are watching this afterwards. So let's go through our initial cleanup here, initial agenda, if I may say. So a few acknowledgements, the usual ones, a few announcements, a bit of a group time. I like to go through the group that is present here and acknowledge all of you that are online with me today, with us today. The presentation the presentation title is Building Amazing Sites in 1 Hour, then Grow into Enterprise Solutions with DNN and Too Sexy Content. And Too Sexy Content, we cannot detach Too Sexy Content from Daniel Mettler, so Daniel Mettler is our presenter. Right now, I'm gonna acknowledge you in a second, Daniel. Thank you very much for being here. So, and then we have our meeting wrap up. So again, we are really here to listen from Daniel today. Great. So a few acknowledgements. Our sponsors, DNN for Less, from a website hosting perspective, and Jess. I want to acknowledge Jess Haggerty from DNN for Less as well. Hoffling Software, our friends as well, Andrew Hoffling, for helping us to put the website together. EasyDNN Solutions for providing some of the modules that were used. But actually, if we have a look there, we are using a module that our guest speaker, guest presenter is, the boss of that. We are using Too Sexy Content on our website, so we can talk about that a bit later, Daniel. Okay, in terms of announcements, there's not much going on, to be honest. DNN is still going on right now with version 9.3.0, a release candidate 2, so there's not much to be discussed here, aside from, I think, that we are on the brink of having DNN 9.3 fully released there, but again, it's not live yet. It's on release candidate number 2. But again, hopefully this will change soon. Okay, what else we have here? A few news points that I want to highlight. First of all is that, let me see if I can bring my browser. Okay, so if you want to keep yourself up to date with what's going on in the DNN space, you should check the DNN Digest. If you are, part of the DNN software mailing list, you get a notification about that every month. But that's where Clint Patterson from DNN Corp, that's where he posts the updates, what's going on in the community. A very good place to get to know what's going on. And we are here as well. They promote us as well here in the post, in the newsletter. So that's a good place to get yourself up to date with what's going on about DNN. Another place is our DNN monthly chat. We have a monthly chat, myself and my buddies there, and we had our last one was just about 2 weeks ago, February 2019. So we talked for an hour. If you have the time, actually, if you have the time and if you go through the full hour, let me know. I want to know if someone goes through the full hour, that we put together. But anyway, we have fun. We talk about things all about DNN, and yeah, that's our monthly blurb news about DNN. What else we have here? So yes, let's talk a little bit about the events. So we just wrap things up about on DNN Summits just about maybe 2 weeks ago, 1 week, 2 weeks ago, yeah. And there's already the announcement of the next one, 2020. I'm not gonna focus on that right now. There's just a bit of an announcement there. I really want to bring to your attention the next DNN Connect event, which will be happening in June 2019 from the 6th to the 9th. Daniel, are you going to be there?
Absolutely. I mean, it's in Switzerland, so we're coming, and we hope to be at least 4 or 5 people. Yeah.
Awesome, awesome. Always a big
and
team.
we're sponsoring it, of course, as well.
Awesome. So, and by the way, I mean, do you have any info about the event that I don't know, maybe you want to feature, you want to highlight?
I actually don't know because I'm not in the organizing committee, so no. But I know Peter is doing a great job preparing for it, and everybody else there too. He's in Switzerland, so he's doing, I think, most of the local stuff. But it's going to be awesome. It was here in Switzerland 10 years ago, so the first DNN Connect was in Switzerland. Awesome. And it was great then, and I'm sure it's going to be great this time too.
Very good. Were you there on the first one?
Yes.
Okay, good.
Yes, that was even before Too Sexy.
Woohoo! Okay, yeah, good. So, again, correct my pronunciation here, Daniel, please. Champéry?
Oh, je ne sais pas. Mon français est terrible.
No. I'm not talking French here. I'm just trying to pronounce the name of the city there. Champéry, is that?
No. I would say Champéry.
Champéry. Okay. Close enough. Better than the last time that I tried to go Champéry.
Yeah. No, Champéry sounds about right.
Champéry. Okay, perfect. Great. Okay, so that was. Again, I don't have much news about DNN Connect. I know that it's happening. This is a date. You, by all means, go to dnn-connect.org to get more information if you are interested in joining that event in Switzerland. Beautiful mountains. Wow. Okay, so to wrap things up here, and so we can get to our main presenter, because you are not here to listen to my blah blah blah. So let me see here. New members. I want to acknowledge the new members that joined us. Some of them, I think, that came, Daniel, because of you. I mean, when people got to know that it was you, people got excited, you know. That's good. Actually, the person who recommended you as a guest is right here, but I'm gonna acknowledge him in a second. Let me go through the new ones. Luis Hill from Irvine, California. Okay, welcome. John Cornelison from Seattle, Washington. Constance from Toronto, Ontario, our neighbor here. And we have Renee Cerul. Renee, very good to have you around. I don't know if you are online, but maybe you watch this afterwards. From Buffalo, New York. I know Renee personally. Very, very good to have you here, Renee. Alessandra Davis. Alessandra, you are there, you know. We need to talk, you know. You need to get back to me. Tell me something. Maybe give me a confirmation right now verbally. I'm waiting for you. Come on.
Pressure much?
Yeah. I'm trying to do some social pressure, you know, here. But anyway.
I know. I am really thinking, like, oh my God, what is it that I know that people will want to know about? I always think everybody knows what I know. Apparently not.
This is not true at all. That's a common misconception. Again, you know a lot. I know a little bit. And again, what I know helps somebody else out there. That's really the point.
True.
So again, don't think like that. You know, it's not about, you know, it's just because you know, it doesn't mean that everybody knows. So again, you have a full arsenal of stuff to share with us, you know?
Yeah, I have to remember I'm the DNN diva, so I must be better than other people.
Good to have you. Good to have you.
Yeah, I'm thinking about, like, you know, talking about the little hacks that I do, that I learned throughout the time, was stuff that I do in skin-wise. Theme. I'm still not happy with that.
Everybody loves a good hack, you know, everybody.
Right. So I'm gonna talk about that then. But I'm still working on details. I was talking to Tracy and say, Tracy, what do I talk about? And he goes, I don't know. And I'm like,
And Alessandra, keep this in mind. You're gonna have the mic for you, just for you, for an entire hour.
God. Yeah, but then it's the pressure. I cannot come up with all the same.
Anyway, we touch base, okay, Alessandra?
Okay, bye-bye.
Okay, so Mandip Singh, who does not know Mandips? Mandeep, I don't know if you are around. Let me see here. You may not, but hey, it's good to have you joining us, Mandeep Singh. And again, we're negotiating your presence here as a speaker as well. Actually we got you an arrangement already. Anyway, then we have, of course, Daniel Mettler, the presenter. Great to have you on the user group as well. And new member, Suki from Oshawa. He's my neighbor. Now, here's the interesting thing. Suki, he does not know anything about DNN. So I'm gonna pose a challenge here for you, Daniel. For you. Someone that it's a bit of a technologist, technical background a bit, but does not know anything about DNN. You have the chance to make a good, first of all, I would like you to do a 1 minute introduction to what DNN is about and see if we can, if we can have one more member here to our community. Go ahead, Daniel. 1 minute. You're muted? Come on, 1 minute. You're muted there.
Well, we'll do that afterwards. He'll see it. I'm sure he'll be excited.
Okay. But again, don't. So I'm gonna expect from your presentation, don't jump 2 feet on you, too sexy, because again, for him, this won't make sense. Give him a bit of an intro of what DNN is about, okay?
Okay, we'll do.
Awesome. Okay, so those are the new members. Let me go through the list here. So we have quite a few. Jeremy, good to see you around. Andrew Hofflin. Andrew, very good to have you around when you are not presenting, very good.
I thought I'd show up.
Of course, we have Daniel, DNN Diva, Alessandra. Again, you give your spiel as well. Jason, my partner in crime, Jason Nagy. Yeah, partner in crime. Good to have you here, man. Better show up, If my partner in crime does not show up, I mean, I'm lost,
I do my best.
Luis, thank you very much for being here. Mark Balson, Mark, again, good to see you. Mark Howell, thank you, Mark. I will be getting back to you soon, okay? So I did forget your email there. Of course, now we have Steve Karpik. Steve, correct if I'm wrong, and I'm quite sure I'm right here. You were the one that recommended Daniel, wasn't it?
Yeah, indeed. I've used the Too Sexy software a lot, and it's great to start with. But beyond that, I'm really curious to just understand how you see it fits into .NET Nuke, because it's rather different than the rest of the structure. So every time I use it, I go, how exactly does this fit? As .NET Nuke evolves, how does Too Sexy evolve, and things like that. So lots of questions like that.
Okay.
Steve, I have a theory, and I don't know if Daniel heard that before, but I have a theory that one day we're gonna see DNN as a plugin to Too Sexy content, Anyway, you're gonna have the chance, Steve, to really drill and grill our friend Daniel Mettler. That's your chance, that's an opportunity of a lifetime. And then we have I'm gonna bastardize your name most likely, but again, I feel sorry about your name already, but Tonchi, that's the best I can come up with, but correct me if I'm wrong, curse at me if I'm bastardizing your name, because I don't like people bastardize my name, so I don't like to bastardize people's name. Great, awesome. Too much blah blah blah. Let me see. There's something going on in the chat here. Okay.
I'd like to just mention that Tonchi is also one of the core developers on Too Sexy.
Okay, so Tonchi, I went right on the spot there. Really?
Yes.
Awesome. I feel good about pronouncing names properly. I think that I'm one of the biggest users of that pronouncename.com, because every name I try to pronounce, I go there first to see if at least if they pronounce it wrong, I'll pronounce the same way as they pronounce, Anyway, okay. Okay, so this is about new members and a bit of a group intro here. Let's go to our main presentation. We are 15 minutes on the mark here. Build amazing sites in 1 hour. Our friend Daniel Mettler, you'll be talking about that. And then grow into enterprise solutions with DNN and to sexy content. Let me give a bit of an intro here to our friend Daniel Mettler. Okay, I'm going to start with iJungleboy, which is his handle, let's put it this way. He is a missionary kid. He spent 11 years in the jungle learning programming on the Bible translation PC of his parents. That alone is worth at least a book, Daniel, but we have to keep this short. He came to Switzerland in 1994, learned German, and then founded TADUG in 1999. So 20 years now. The company has 20 employees and has contributed at least 5 man years of work to the open source community. Been using DNN since 2003, SharePoint since 2006, Angular since 2013, released 2 sexy content in 2012, which today powers around 20% of all DNN sites. I would be curious, Daniel, to know how you came about that figure, but again, you can keep for the presentation. Married for 16 years, 2 kids, love to party, play board games, enjoy wine, and travel the world. Have been to more than 25 countries, and he eats everything that we can think of. That's good. I think that I made justice to your intro here, Daniel.
Perfect.
Awesome. So I'm going to give you presenter access so you can get things moving. Let me see here. Okay, make presenter. And you should see something there, Daniel.
Okay, let's start this. So, do you guys see me?
Yes.
Perfect. So I have about 1 hour, and I'm gonna try to pack a lot of things into this 1 hour. And if there are any like short questions, you can bring them. Otherwise, better keep them back a bit for the discussion round at the end. So yeah, we've been doing structured content, or too sexy, since 2012. And my goal for today is, of course, that you all are very excited about what DNN can actually be. And there's a few things coming as well, which I'd like to talk about towards the end of the presentation, future features, and some really exciting stuff we're working on. And of course, anybody that's already been using Too Sexy, I really hope I can give you a lot of things, a lot of input today to use things you've probably never used before. So the agenda is introductions. I'm going to do a brief demo, especially for people who've never ever used it before. Then I'm going to go a little bit more into technical overview, so you get an idea of what actually is inside the box. Then we'll look at, yes.
Sorry, I'm going to interrupt you there for a second. 1 minute, talk about to our friend here, new friend, DNN. What is DNN?
Yes, we'll do that right at the demo, because I'll show a screen of DNN, of course, and that'll make it a bit easier to explain. Okay, then we're going to look at some basic ideas behind Too Sexy. We're going to do a deep dive into some more features. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about sibling projects like Koi or Razorblade. I'm going to show you what we're working on right now and what's coming after that. And then some time for Q&A. So let's just get started with some introductions. So actually, Aderson already said most of this. So yeah, I've been with the community for a very long time. And let's say at heart, I'm still a programmer, but of course, with 20 employees, I have to do a lot of management things, a lot of projects. But of course, coding is still my passion. And I actually still code a lot on Too Sexy myself. This is my team, just as a very short idea of who's all with me. And this is like our corporate mission. That's actually what the 2-SIG stands for, is to serve, to invent, and to create. And what Aderson already said is Too Sexy has been around for like a long time, almost 7 years now. It started as an internal project. It's open source. It has 4 to 5 years of real man coding time in it. We have over 200,000 lines of code in it. Most of it is JavaScript. And yeah, in the core, there are 5 people working on it constantly. 1 person's full-time. And yes, as Aderson said, it's on about 20% of the DNNs. Basically, I got some inside information of how many DNNs are running, and we have some dialogues, like some installation dialogues, which need to get data from our system. And from there, I can kind of do the math and figure out which ones are test installations and which ones are probably productive. And that brings us to about 20% coverage right now. And basically, a lot of people ask, why do we do it? Especially, why do we invest so much time? And the truth is, we really just basically had to do it. When we started out with DNN in about 2003, it did a lot of neat things, but basically it was just far from what we needed. Like Switzerland has 4 languages, a lot of websites are multi-language, and that was just one of the examples. Or otherwise, if you have to update a DNN and you've like purchased a lot of modules, usually updating it is terrible because some modules may not be supported anymore, some may not work anymore. And that's why we said we need a generic solution that just works across everything that we can use to build a blog, a news, a gallery, whatever. And that way keep the upgrade stress minimal because it's all just one thing. Yes, and of course, one of the core things as well was that making small things work should not use developers in Visual Studio. You should just be able to use HTML, Bootstrap, whatever, and not worry about compiling or things like that. And I believe we did a pretty good job at that. So I'm going to start with a brief live demo. And here's a DNN website. And I just forgot your name, who I'm going to explain this to. I think you're on the list here. Suki, right?
To be honest, I think that you already dropped. So.
Okay. But anyway, let's just start with a very short thing. This is a DNN website. It has some nicely layouted content, and we're now going to log on, and we're going to log on as a, let's say, a more basic user, not with full permissions. And once I log on, the page looks exactly the same. And that's thanks to 2Sexy, of course. But so for anybody who's never used DNN before, DNN is a web-based platform for creating any kind of solution. Some companies use it to create corporate like tools, intranets, but most of them will probably use it to create websites. And no matter what you do, you can get like hundreds of plugins from the store. Though if you use 2Sexy extensively, that's usually the only plugin you'll ever need. And basically in here you have things like page management, user management, and all those kinds of things. And so DNN can be leveraged to build anything you want, including the backend for mobile applications and things like that. And what I'm going to show you is more or less what's possible with content management and especially 2Sexy. So I'll go on from there now. Basically, what we have here is a page which looks appropriate, and if I mouse over the thing, since I'm logged on, I get a bunch of edit buttons, and that's the edit experience that 2Sexy gives everybody. And the basic idea is that no matter what element I want to edit, I can just hit edit, and I will get a little mask which tells me things I can type into, like here, 1, 2, 3. I can just save that, and the demo website I'm showing you right now is in German, but I'm sure the few buttons that you will see will not confuse you too much. And if I go to a lot of things, it just makes everything super simple. I can enter information here and it'll be layouted automatically to look correct. So let me just quickly get a picture and drag that in here. Like, let's just say I would like to replace this rowing person here with something different, like a nice picture. I can just drag it in, I can drop it, and it'll be replaced. And it gets cropped automatically to be exactly the right size and the right shape, so everything looks super nice. So basically, no matter what thing I look at, it'll always just provide me with hover buttons and that I can edit it any way I want to. And if I feel like it, I can also say that I would like to change the way something looks. For example, I'm on this element here, and maybe I'd like to have the very same information shown differently. So I can just say I would like to change the way it looks. Maybe I'd like to have the picture on the right side. Maybe I'd like to have it on the left side, but a little bit smaller. And the cool thing about this is that the designer is responsible for what it looks like, and the editor is responsible for the content, but he can't muck it up, at least not unless he tries really, really hard. So this creates a great separation of responsibilities. The people who know design and who know things like Bootstrap can make it look right. And those people who just want to put in the content can do it very, very quickly and efficiently. So for example, I can always go here and say, I want another element in between this. I can then say, okay, this is just some simple content. I have a preview already. I can already try around what it should be like. I can save it. I can go in and edit it. And most of this is Ajax, so it'll reload immediately without reloading the page by itself, which is a really neat experience that DNN doesn't give you otherwise. So put in a title, put in some kind of a nice picture, save that, and that's it. And of course, I can then keep on working on it. And so that's just a super quick intro into it. I can also show you that I could go to another website. For example, I can go, there's a demo here with the blog in the background, and the blog itself works exactly the same way. So here I'd have to log in again because it's a separate portal. And the blog will work just the same way. Let me just check. Oh, it actually changed portals for me. I have to log on again. That's a little demo bug, which we'll have to fix. It changed websites on the top. I went back to the original, so this is taking just a second longer to load. But here in a blog, it's the very same functionality. I can look at something, I can edit it. And the entry mask always works the same way. I have fields, I have date pickers, time pickers. I have a really, really cool WYSIWYG editor, which is, in our opinion, way better than the default in DNN. I have drag and drop picture upload. I can create galleries, tags, whatever. And I can do all this multi-language, and it works the same whether it's an FAQ, whether it's some simple content. And if I want to extend it, let's say I have a blog and my customer has some special needs, I can do that very quickly. And I think the one thing I haven't mentioned yet is a website like the one you can see right in front of you, we create something like this in 1 hour. And the reason is that basically things like image text combinations, everybody needs. So there are like templates for this already in 2Sexy, which you can just install. In addition, it's prepared to work on Bootstrap 3 and 4, and it'll reuse the styles that the theme gives it. So basically within minutes, we can change a few colors, we can change a few widths, and it'll just look amazing right away. And so this actually makes the entire let's set up something technical very, very simple and very quick. And then you can start actually making it look as amazing as you need to without having to worry about the technology. Okay, so that was the live demo. If you have any brief questions, just go ahead and ask them. Otherwise, I'll just continue on this. So we just saw a website that can be built, basically this version in 15 minutes, but of course, usually there's some customization that we add. Since it's all built for us, usually using Sass and Bootstrap 4, it's super quick to modify, and we can always add new fields, new behavior, any way we want to. If somebody else has a different CSS framework, no problem. It's also very easy to use for that. The UI is consistent, fast, and just unobtrusive because I don't have to like switch edit modes or things like that. And there's a clear separation of who's in charge of the design, who's in charge of the logic, the code, and who's in charge of the content. And of course, everything is usually responsive. The images resize automatically. The server gives the right resolution and all that. And it's all built in already. So that was just a short looking at it. We'll do a deeper dive in a few minutes. And now I'd like to give you like a more technical overview of what 2Sexy actually is. Now, this may be a bit confusing if you're not that into the technical stuff, but just bear with me. It'll just give you kind of a short idea of what's going on. So basically the main parts is there's a core system, which is in charge of all the data handling and all that. There are the user interfaces, like the dialogues you just saw, or the bottom bar, which you saw, which would let me switch between layouts. There's the in-page editing component, which lets me have hover toolbars or insert things in the middle of something. There's the output templating for making your templates by the designer. And there's a whole technical system in the background for querying the data so that you can use it in JavaScript apps or even in mobile applications. Now here's a slightly deeper view of the core component, the data handling system. Now, there's a lot in the background. I mean, 200,000 lines of code means something, and 40,000 lines is just the back end. And I'd just like to point out a few highlights which I've marked, because of course in these 5 minutes I won't be able to talk about everything. But the first thing I'd like to mention is that the core system of 2Sexy is built on .NET Core, and it's been this way for over 1.5 years now. And that means that whenever .NET Core is ready for DNN or the other way around, we're already there. And anybody that builds something with 2Sexy is really, really close to migrating into that. Then what I'd also like to mention is the multi-language system, which I'll demo a little more later on, which is really, I would say, like, I don't think I've ever seen any better implementation of multi-language. You can select each field which you'd like to translate, but if things like the picture should not be translated, they will always use the primary language. You can couple languages. It's pretty crazy. Then there's something probably nobody knows about, and that's called the metadata system. And that's why I'd just like to mention it today. It's a system where I could take any other data. It could be database records, it could be DNN users, it can be pages, and I can enrich it with content from 2Sexy. I can have my content types, which enhance the information of something existing, and these things will be linked together. And that is a very powerful concept for building up on something where you already have data, but you just need to add stuff. You might have maybe open job positions which come from your backend, and now you'd like to add some things like pictures which the backend didn't provide. Well, then you can merge that data with metadata. And then what I'd also like to mention is something people probably also don't know, is that it's very easy to build additional plugins which will extend the core configuration system of 2Sexy with global content types, global data sources, and things like that. Everything else in here, whether it's the CSV data source, SharePoint connections, version data, different formats, I'm gonna have to skip on that because there's more. The user interfaces, again, probably a lot of things in here, and I'm just gonna highlight a few things. There are about, pardon me, need a short second here. There are about 30 different built-in fields, and like one of the coolest one is the GPS field, which will automatically take data from other input fields to find the address on a Google map, and then you can still move the pin a bit and save it. And that is really great for creating Google Maps style applications, whether it's houses or addresses or where people live. It's very, very neat. Then you can also make custom fields. One of the crazy things in 2Sexy as well is there's a live insight system. So you can actually go and look at almost every processing step that 2Sexy does, which helps you like really find issues if something doesn't work as you expected. And it's like one of these hidden gems. If you've never used it or tried it, go ahead, you'll love it. Then what I'd also like to mention is the visual designer of queries. I'm just gonna do a very, very brief look into that so you have an idea of what this could be like, but we'll go into it a little more in detail later on. But there's this really neat system here to create queries. And this is just much nicer to read than code. And what's really cool about this is that even non-technical people will be able to make changes. Even if maybe the initial query may be too difficult for them to build, if we distribute something that has such a query in it, they can make changes without needing to learn programming. Then also, there's a really cool template editor for creating the output templates, which even includes snippets that know what you're working on, which provide you field names, which automatically give you resize image links and things like that. So really, really nice. Then the in-page editing user experience, as you already saw, it's just fast. It's just really nice. It's to put it this way, it's not what you're used to on DNN. What's also, in my opinion, extremely important is that the editor sees the page as it will be. He doesn't have all these things on the page which make the page look distorted. It's just the way it is, and he can work on it. The Ajax reloading, of course, is really cool. And what a lot of people don't know is it's mobile capable. So the hover buttons will appear if you shake your mobile device, and they will go away if you shake it again. And I think nobody ever knows about that because you can't just label it. But this makes DNN pages editable even on a mobile device, which is really neat. Then what we also have are things like that you can put content inside content. You can have a WYSIWYG text and add a gallery and a contact form in the middle of your text and then keep on writing some more, which is really neat. And there's also this feature that most people only see what they're supposed to, and advanced stuff only appears if you really have elevated permissions or if you have some special keyboard shortcuts. And this makes the UI just not as intimidating as other DNN UIs actually are. Then just to mention about the templating, you can use Razor, you can use Token. If you're on the server, Razor is usually the preferred option. And even for JavaScript, we have connectors that will call the TooSexy data API, give you the data in JavaScript. And there's even special libraries for AngularJS and Angular 4, 5, 6, 7, just so you can get going, create your SPA applications. And the whole backend is created in minutes, not any programming required for that. And that's really neat. You have a whole permission system to say who's allowed to get data, edit data. So it's all in there. And that's actually where we get into all the queries and the APIs. I think one of the things best hidden is the entire REST APIs that TooSexy has. Because again, all the data, you can just use a special URL, you can get the lists, you can get one item, you can edit it. And the permission system makes sure that you can control things like let's say registered users are allowed to add something, but they're only allowed to edit the ones of which they are owner. And that kind of functionality makes it really cool to create any kind of application, which in real life is so common, whether it's these are my favorite links, these are the pictures I would like to contribute to this website, etc. And what's also very cool is you can create your own C# APIs without restarting DNN every time you type something. So it's really great for rapid development. And in the newest editions of TooSexy, there's even a system called Polymorph, which lets you do open heart surgery. So basically, you can work on the live website on a separate edition of your code than is in production. You can test it, and when you're done, you can deploy that to production, all on the live website, without having to create separate staging copies and things like that. And we're going to extend that in the next few versions to also work for the layouts and all that, just so to make working much, much easier. And then probably one of the most loved bits is the automatic digital asset management for handling pictures, files, and things like that, which I won't go into much detail, but everybody I know loves it. And it really makes work so much easier because you don't have all these files cluttered across the system or a portal. Then there's a lot of documentation and tutorials, apps, videos, blogs. There's a whole wiki with all the technical stuff. And there's a lot of things we try to do in context. So just go for it. So here's a summary. We have all these main parts. We have a bunch of extensions bundled, which we'll look at a little bit more later on, including Razor Blade Koi, the image resizer. And there's all these kind of really nice things that should help you getting going. And here's one of the ones I really love. Like TooSexy even supports Evoke workflows, which Liquid Content doesn't. So even a lot of Evoke customers love to use TooSexy, even though they would have a structured content system available, just because TooSexy does things nicer and better. So that was just the short overview. And here now some key things, ideas that are in TooSexy, which you've maybe experienced and maybe been confused about. And I'd just like to share these because it'll help you understand things a little better as you're experiencing things. The first one is, of course, we have a clear separation of roles. The visitor is the person we're trying to make happy. He should get super fast websites. And for example, we've even gotten 100 points on Google PageSpeed. So the visitor must be happy, and the editor wants to get the visitor happy. And that's his biggest mission. And he just wants to create great content, make it look great, and not worry about things that he can mess up, like too large of a picture, etc. The designer wants to make the editor happy, and he can only do that if he has the tools for it. And the developer wants to make the designer happy, and this whole chain has clear roles of what each person should be doing and what they can do, and the UI matches that. So the editor does not have the same functionality as the designer or the developer, for example. So yeah, that's our priority. The visitor has to be happy, the editor has to be happy, but he has different options, of course, than the visitor. And the designer has to be able to work with things he knows, whether it's Bootstrap, HTML, Sass, and he shouldn't have to care about developer things like database queries and things like that. And this separation really works very, very well. Then one of the things that confuses a lot of people is that they want to edit data, and 2Sexy can do that, but the primary focus is on content. And people often don't get that difference because they'll come from a database idea thinking in terms of tables, but content is just so much more than that. It's a statement on a page which only makes sense if there's a picture before it or after it, for example. And that's why a lot of the things don't feel like you're editing records, even though technically you are. But the UI is completely built to feel like you're editing a page and working on that page and creating useful information, and not that you're editing a record of data. So there's context, there's the way things work. And just as a very simple example, data usually is sorted by some kind of a criteria. A blog is more like data because it's sorted automatically. But in content, when I have a list of pictures, I usually want to manually define their order. If I have a list of links, I want to manually define their order. And that's why the UI has to support that. Let me just give you a very simple example here. I'm going to go back to home. If this were a data system, I would have to give each position a weight or something to make it sort correctly. But if I look at it as content, I can just go here and say, okay, I would like to move this up one position, and then it slips over there. It's a different way of thinking about it. And I think this is, by the way, one of the biggest shortcomings of a lot of other content systems is they don't get this. They try to treat content as if it were data. They try to give a data management interface. I believe Liquid Content does that completely wrong as well. Whereas the editor doesn't feel like he's working on data here when he's doing these kind of things. He feels like he's working on the page. And what's also very special is when content is reusable, let's say an address, it will have different, let's say, presentation settings, whether it's on a map, which may have information as what the pin could look like, or if this very same address is used in a visual thing with a logo and a picture, and maybe there's a setting to make the picture larger. And so separating the logic of what should the content look like and what should the content be, that's a very important thing. And it's all over the way 2Sexy works, and if you try it, you'll find that. Then one of the things, and this is basically based on this issue that I was saying about people not getting content, is that 2Sexy clearly separates this. So you have a content mode, which is what you're seeing here. I just add blocks of information. I do something with them. And here I'm just feeling like I'm just editing content. I'm saying I'm going to insert some simple content. This is what it should look like. And that's it, right? Whereas if I insert an application, let me just see if I can do this quickly with one of the samples. If I insert an application like an image gallery, then the behavior changes a bit. Because here, the user interface asks me different things. It'll not ask me, like, which content are you trying to add? It's more going to ask me, would you like to see the tag cloud or the list of latest blog items? Because it's a different problem that we're trying to solve. And so there's a clear separation of these two ideas. And once you think about it, it becomes very logical. But if you think in terms of tables and records, it feels confusing at first. So here's just a short overview. And for example, we really wanted to make sure that even though the content part is technically the same thing as the app, we've disabled some features on purpose to make people work the way it's meant to be and to make the experience much better for the editor. For example, the content area is meant to not be as technical. There are no queries or things like that. Whereas the app section, which is more powerful, has all the technical data bits as well if you need them. But the content should be all about adding pictures, adding addresses, adding maps, adding things that just feel like they're content. And they should be super streamlined, they should be Ajax. Whereas an app might not be able to do Ajax refreshing because maybe the JavaScript would break. So these things are different, and they're different on purpose. And then one of the core things we always really care about is we don't want to develop new CSS frameworks or anything like that. We want to make sure people can leverage things that already exist. Because if they use Razor, we don't have to invent a documentation of how to do a for each loop because it's out there. If they use Razor, they can use LinkQ for querying. If they use Razor, there's so much documentation and guides how to use it that makes our life much easier. The same thing is for Bootstrap or whatever CSS framework people use. So 2Sexy stays out of this. It just does what you want it to do and doesn't try to enforce any one of these things at all. And then based on that, we of course try to provide as many demos and best practices examples as we can. For example, we've created a theme which uses Bootstrap 4 and Sass for fully automated customization. And that's what we're trying to do. Show people how to use it, but try to keep our focus on the technical bits so that people can then not worry about that and create really cool stuff with JavaScript frameworks which exist, with JavaScript galleries which exist, and just provide the data from 2Sexy. And then I would say last but not least is it's really important that we can upgrade seamlessly. That was the upgrade hell that previously we had with DNN when we had a lot of modules. It was always really hard to upgrade. And that really means that we also keep a lot of features secret, even though they're already in there, because if we're the only ones using it, we can still make some corrections if the basic idea was wrong. If it's already out there, it has to stay stable. And what's also nice is if there ever is a breaking change, since it's not a compiled DLL, anybody can always make the corrections very quickly in their template, which is really nice. And that's what I just mentioned. We keep a lot of features secret until they're really proven to work this way. And then we suddenly say, hey, there's this new feature, and it may have been in there for half a year already. So, got so far. I'm going to do a deep dive now into some more of the topics I just mentioned. But if somebody would have any questions right now, this would be a moment to just bring them in. Would anybody like to just ask a brief question about what you saw so far?
Daniel, Andrew, do you want to ask something? I mean, you had some points there. Do you want to mention anything?
Yeah, I'll mention it, but this might be something for the end. I'm not 100% sure on this one, Daniel, but last I heard, .NET Core 3.0 was not going to support .NET Framework. What's the plan to migrate to .NET Core 3.0 when that's generally available?
Okay, so that is actually something that's coming towards the end. So I'll bring that up.
Okay, sounds good.
Cool. More questions?
I'll save mine towards the end as well, Daniel.
Okay, perfect. Then let's look at some deep dive things. So what you already saw is the in-page preview and editing experience. And what I kind of glossed over is the quickie, which I just like to do a very short demo here. One of the really neat features that's just there with 2Sexy is this toolbar to do things. And this is something that allows us to never even tell our customers that there's this edit button. So our customers usually don't even know that exists. They may press it once and then be confused and think, gosh, what is this? But what's really neat is we can do things like even move modules. So we can pick something up here and drop it up here, and it'll just move it up or down. And we can insert things anywhere we want to. if a page has multiple panes, and let me tell you, it's a bad idea, but if it does, the Quickie, of course, supports that as well, and it'll float around in the panes as you need them. But in general, because of a lot of complicated things in relation to mobile and responsive, we really recommend to stick to one pane. So that's the Quickie. And it would also allow you to do things like move to another pane if it's not easily accessible and things like that. And you can even delete modules and stuff like that, which I'll just do right here. And that in itself already makes work so much easier for a normal editor. Then the Ajax template switching, you already saw that. The Atom bit, I believe we didn't really go into that yet. But let me just show you 2 or 3 things so you understand this. The Atom is this idea that I can take any kind of page, any kind of solution, drop a picture here, and it'll be automatically stored for you in some secret place. Technically, actually, if I mouse over this, or if I open it in a new window, you'll see actually it's automatically placed in a special folder. And this file now belongs to this item. And if I would like find out, okay, wait a second, this was the wrong picture, or maybe in near future, I might add a different picture. I can still roll back to the previous picture. And so Atom really, really solves the question of, is my file used anywhere else? Because if you stick to using it, the file will never be used again. And that allows you to much better clean up things and make sure that the entire site is consistent. Basically, people are afraid to delete files if they don't have Atom because they always have to assume the pictures or the PDF is used in other places. And this is, for 95% of the use cases, the much, much more elegant and the no-brainer solution. The inner content, I won't have that much time to demonstrate it, but let me quickly show you a live example. Oh my, so I didn't quite prepare this. Let me see if I just have a very short example here. Nope, this is just text. This as well. Okay, so here's an example. This is a blog, and actually everything starting from here down to here is just one WYSIWYG field. And it has an app embedded in the middle of the content. And doing this allows so many things. For example, if you have a blog and you would like to spontaneously add a call to action app, or if you have a blog and you would like to add a gallery, as you see in this case, because this is again a full app with all the functionalities of an app, you can do this. And you don't have to add a lot of fields to your blog. You can just use inner content. And this just scales so much better than trying to create a gallery, which also has blog functionality and form functionality. And oh, you might also need a QR code and a call to action. And then the blog becomes an impossibly complex application and you cannot maintain it. But with inner content, you can just go into this let me just log on briefly. And I can just edit this blog. I'm not going to save my changes now. But as you can see, here's just my very short text, and here's a placeholder for the app. And I could add another one here if I felt like it and just say, okay, I need another one. And then when I save it, I can pick the app and do all that kind of stuff. And actually, let me just save this because I'm sure nobody's on our live website right now, and I'll turn it back in a second. But now I have a placeholder here, and again, with Quickie, I can insert any kind of app or component that I want to. And This is just so much easier than building all those complicated applications. You can create clearly dedicated things that do one thing. You can have, just as an example, a directory of houses that you're about to rent. And in one special house, you suddenly think, here, a gallery would be nice. And you can just add that in the WYSIWYG.
Daniel, I'm going to interrupt you for a second. I just want to take the opportunity that you are there in the topic to ask you in context. So what this is a way to add additional functionality to something as simple as a blog post. You don't have to go through complexity that and build additional stuff just because now you have one blog post that needs whatever it is, a widget.
Exactly.
And those apps, they are 2sex content apps, correct?
Yes.
Okay, that's it. Thank you.
Yes, just to see it again, as I'm logged on now, you'll see that here, of course, I have the edit buttons of the blog, and here I have the edit buttons of the gallery, right, as part of it. I could edit the gallery right here in the middle of the blog post. So I won't finish this now because I'll have to continue. But inner content is so powerful because, again, it helps you create clean, dedicated apps, and just because somebody needs a gallery once doesn't mean you have to redesign your whole application. What's also neat is the data history. You can restore previous versions of the data, which is really cool. And the multi-language is just really, really fun. I'm going to do a very short demo here on the website of the Swiss Social Security. Because, yeah, this is, I'm going to go to the German version for a second. And here's a very typical situation. You have a website in many languages, you start creating the first translation, and what usually will happen is when you translate to the other languages in all other systems that I know, all the data is copied. And that means if one day you decide to update the picture, you will probably forget to update it in the other languages. But the way 2sexy works is, let's look at this tile here. Again, we have all these tiles, and if I go to this tile and edit it, I, of course, have my German content. And here's an example where at least I will have to update the title, but I don't want to change the picture for other languages. So in other languages, I will say which fields I want to translate and which ones I don't. And this allows me to much more consistently keep all the languages in sync. I could even have a 10-language setup and say that I'm going to couple Portuguese and Spanish, for example, because maybe a lot of the bits are more similar than the English and the Australian English, which are coupled again. So I can tie these languages together. I can even say things like that this language here should be really coupled to another language. And if it's updated in that language, this one will always use that as well. So if you've never done multi-language, this doesn't sound very exciting, but if you ever did multi-language, this is a lifesaver. Okay, so then that's kind of the things that the editors really love. Now, a short look at the things that the designers and developers, of course, love is, first of all, just the entire starting packs. In other words, you could use 2sexy any way you want to, and you don't even have to use our components that we provide. But when you do install it, it'll suggest that you could have a QR code app, a blog app, a gallery app, an image compare app, and it gets all of these from the 2sexy App Store, which just says store, but you don't have to pay for them. And these are really mature applications. Even though they're free, they are production ready. We use them in most of our websites. And there's so much already in there, and even form apps or blog apps, Angular, Showcase apps, glossary apps, courses and events with registration and counting if there are still some seats available and things like that, and showing only the courses that are still bookable and all that. And there's just so many things that are just available, and you can just use them, or you can install them and customize them to do whatever you want. And everything we release uses Sass. So if you want to change the styling, you should learn Sass, of course, but it's not something we invented. You can just use very standard Sass. And everything is so easy to customize. And I'm just going to do a very brief demo on this because this is probably not so obvious if you just hear us saying it. But let's look at this example here where we'd have a picture. And this has 3 fields, a title, a picture, and the image hotspot, which internally is used for the automatic image resizer to choose how to move the picture in case it doesn't fit the area, right? And let's say I would like to change something here. So let me go and just say, okay, I'd like to add a field. So I'm going to add a field, and I'm just going to call this something like this field. I'm going to call this like intro. And I'm sorry that this is German, but the demo website we have is German. And let's say this should be a WYSIWYG. And if I save this, I now have a field more. It's called intro. And that means one moment later, if I hit edit, well, here I have a WYSIWYG. And I can also do things like drag in images into the WYSIWYG as well. I can say I would like to have it 100%. And of course, I could add inner content or whatever. And now I'll save this. So I just extended a field, and I can do the very same thing with the blog or the news or the courses system. So if something's missing, I don't have to find out how this guy developed it and how to extend the SQL and the database layer and everything. It's just there. And if I would now like to say, oh, well, good, I have the field now. I believe I called it intro, but let's just make sure it also is shown here somewhere. Just as an example, I'm going to say it's pre-formatted. And here I see the fields of this content type, and I'm going to say, okay, I'd just like to show the intro here, and I have some more possible templates, but basically I just want it as, this is the impractical version, which would show the HTML. I would typically want to add it as raw HTML. I can save this, and if I refresh the page now, it has to recompile the Razor script, so this might take a second. It's there. And this kind of a speed of how to customize something, whether you use something that we built and need to enhance it, or whether you're just starting from scratch, there's no other system that gets you this productive in this short of a time. So you can create anything you want, or just change anything and save so much time to create something. Yeah, what we also love, of course, is that we've gotten up to 100 points on the Google page speed, which is, in my opinion, really amazing because most DNN websites really don't even get close to that. But actually just sticking to standard Bootstrap 4 conventions using 2Sexy, it works. The inline code editor is also something that's really neat in my opinion. And this is this thing here. So the ability to just quickly change something directly online, and in many cases already have all these templates for toolbars, or even snippets for the C# code, like, oh, how does this work with how do I get the link queue in here? Or how do I get a sub-template to render? A sub-template is if you would have like a shared template, which you need in multiple places, and people just never remember what the syntax is, right? And if you click this, right, that's how it works, right? And these things are just, we keep on enhancing them with all the features that we add. And it just helps you to be really productive very, very quickly. Here, for example, you can also see a sub-template, which is a special thing which will do the image rendering in the size you want. It's nothing amazing, but it just helps to put that stuff in a central location. Then the visual query. This is, in my opinion, one of the best things ever. So to explain what happens is, in these cases, it's very clear the user said, I would like to have a picture here, and I would like it to look this way. And for that, you don't need a query. But for other things, you do. So as an example, if we go to the blog that we just looked at previously, this, of course, is a list of things, and it should get them, and it should sort them, and it should hide the ones that are in the future. Of course, it should hide the ones that are not published. And if I click on a category, for example, then it should filter by that category. But of course, it shouldn't filter by the category if the category is not in the URL. And this sounds all kind of trivial, but once you start coding all this, things do get a little messy and you tend to always forget something. Now, if we would have coded this in a place where only a programmer could change it, then making optimizations or adjustments would be super hard. So what we actually have in here is a system which is called Visual Query. And you can either reach it by twisting around this thing into the admin buttons and hitting this button here, or go into the full admin section and then get it there. And what you would get if you look at the query here is this thing. Now, this may look daunting at first, but basically what we have is a publishing filter, which will make sure that only admins see unpublished content. We have the app, which has blog posts and categories. We have things like which will check if we should filter it from the URL or if there's a setting that should filter it. And if we look at that, then we will filter the posts by category, but we might also filter it by tag or by author. And then there's this merger thing, which will say, check if there's one filtered by tags or by author or by category, or just take the fallback. Then we sort it, we ensure paging, which will also get the parameters from the URL, just as an example, so you have an idea what this means. I can click on the settings and it will, this is just a nice title. The default page size is 10 and the current page should be retrieved from the query string or default to 1. And this is all just, you can configure each little bit. There's this cache all streams, which will make sure that once one URL has been hit, then exactly this filter combination will be cached for a certain amount of time or until the data and the source has changed. And this is all really powerful stuff. Each of these data sources has a lot of really smart code behind it that you don't have to write. You can just go there and say, oh gosh, yeah, right. I would just like to sort this thing by descending by this property, and that's it. And there's often in context help. You can add test values, and then you can play this. And you will, on one hand, see the JSON results, just so you can better debug what's happening. But what's also super neat is you can now see on each stream how many data items went through each connection. So you can really, in real time, see where did my configuration go wrong? What did I mess up? Did I forget something? Why? I thought this stream should have this and this number on it, but it seems to be empty. And this kind of an insight is so valuable to get things done. And this is the fairly sophisticated example, but I'd like to show you the example that we have on the details, because here's another super simple thing. This is a blog post, and for example, it has a previous and afterwards post, and here's the visual query for that. So you see again, we have a publishing filter to ensure only data is used which the users can see. Then we get the current post from the URL parameter. Then we also do a reverse and correct sorting just to pick the one that comes before and afterwards. And then we provide this item under the name previous to the template, the main item as a default, and the next item as this. And then you can very easily just say, okay, here, this is what I would like the previous one to look like. This is what I would like the next one to look like. And this is something, let's say an HTML person can configure or can adjust if he needs it to, but he would almost certainly not be able to write the code for this. So I have to keep a little bit of an eye on the time at the moment. So we have the visual query, data sources, API and REST, just as a very short mention. So even a query like this can just be queried through REST. You can just say, give me this data and you will get it. But of course, you can configure the security so only certain people can get it or others not. And you can create your very own custom APIs, and you'll see you can get anything you want as JSON within minutes. And that is just so productive for developers to get things going. You have the JavaScript endpoints and the custom JavaScripts. Good. So that was a little bit of a deep dive into the bits. I would like to now just mention a few sibling projects which are often included with TooSexy, for example. but they're standalone projects. You could even use them in your own solution that was not a too sexy solution. But we think these are very important things. And in terms of separation of concerns, we try to put things like, let's say, image resizing outside of too sexy. It's bundled, but it's a standalone component because we want to make sure that as we evolve the solution, we don't make the core too heavy. And we want to make sure people can benefit from the parts, even if they don't use too sexy. So the first one I just like to mention is the image resizer, which has been part of too sexy for forever. It's so amazing. In the latest version, it'll also rotate the pictures for you from the server, which is something that's been in there all the time, but we just activated the feature now. It's blindingly fast. It has amazing caching. It's really good. Koi, which is something we released, I have to think, but I think about almost a year ago. And this is a very neat system because basically any theme can just include a short text file, which lets the system know whether this is a Bootstrap 4 theme or a Bootstrap 3 theme or a skeleton theme or whatever. And that's all the theme has to do. It just has to make sure it publishes what it's using. And then any component, including our content templates, can pick this up and say, oh, you're Bootstrap 3. In that case, this is what I would like you to do. Or you're Bootstrap 4. In that case, this is what I'd like you to do. And this is so helpful because, just as an example, we often have customers that started on Bootstrap 3. It looks good on their system now, but now we're gradually moving over to Bootstrap 4. Now, actually, the components can already support both. And if we swap the theme, it still looks right, even though the HTML is different, just because it can react. And this also allows us to deploy too sexy, like the default templates, to any theme that has this file in it, and it'll automatically adjust the output. And this is something that is really cool, especially because we will always be changing CSS frameworks in the future, just because they get better. And this allows us to grow with it without breaking past compatibility. Then we have Razorblade. This one's fairly new. And it centralizes a bunch of common problems like setting the page title from Razor. It's pretty hard. This makes it super easy. Setting JSON LD headers. If you've ever wondered how to get Google to show nice tiles of your pages, you have to look into JSON LD. It's really amazing. What we're going to add in the next version probably is all these different kinds of icons you can provide for mobile devices, desktop, etc., all just in one line of code to make sure all the icons in the right sizes are included, etc. So even if you don't use too sexy, you will love Razorblade. Then we have our instant theme, which just contains best practices Bootstrap 4, and you can just get it up and going, and within minutes you have something that looks amazing and your customer thinks you've been working on it for hours, and it was just tweaking some variables. So briefly, the Sibling projects, what I didn't mention is Bootstrap Instant 3, which is the older version, and the Angular for DNN, which is a JavaScript NPM package, which just lets you integrate Angular on DNN so much easier because it's really hard to do right. And we have all these seed apps, whether it's the content templates for just normal websites, the galleries, articles, apps, whether it's a blog, FAQ, or showcase, events, QR codes, and so many more. So what I'd like to show you now is what we're working on right now. And we're getting towards the end of the session here, but what we've been working on for over a year now is the new Angular UI. So the main edit dialog that you've been seeing will be replaced with a brand new one, which is 2 to 3 times faster still than what you already saw. And it'll just be a really cool foundation for adding future features like conditional fields that disappear if something else has been selected and all that kind of stuff. What we're also working on is the polymorph editions, which is this concept for open heart surgery, where you have the very same thing in different editions. The end user sees the output in the default edition, and you can just set a switch and you will see a different edition and you can work on it. You might have errors, but your end users still see the live edition, even though you're working on the very same server. this will make development so much easier and not so scary, because we're all doing open heart surgery on our websites, and it's just terrible if they keep on having downtimes. The metadata system, it's one of those secret features that's been in there for 5 years now. We think we have it good enough that we can now tell everybody about it and the API, and we'll release that soon. It's mostly a documentation thing. Then what's also a big topic is the in-page editing. So to be able to drag and drop pictures directly onto the page itself, not through the edit UI, or do some basic text editing directly in the page. And what's also a big issue for us right now is pasting images directly from the clipboard or pasting formatted text in a way that it's just really cool. So those are the things that are work in progress right now. And so what's coming after that? Basically, once we finish the Angular UI, the new one, we're going to add a lot of features which we've been holding back on so far, because we were afraid if we added in the old system, we're just going to do the whole work twice. So there's a lot of really neat things we want to do there, including the intelligent forms, which will include functionality, as I just previously said, like if the user selects this thing, then these fields would be blocked, these would be hidden, maybe he has some more options, that kind of stuff. Then one of the things we'll be really excited to work on is creating a headless 2Sexy, which runs on .NET Core. I already mentioned that the foundation of 2Sexy is already .NET Core. And what we'd like to get going is an output system, which is just running on a pure .NET Core server, which uses the very same data, but will have a Razor template instead of the classic DNN ASCX template, and will be completely headless. So we believe that the page speed will probably be 3 to 10 times faster than it is now. And even now we already have a really great system, but we just believe this is the next important step. Also, to make sure people can really leverage really, really neat technologies in .NET Core. Then more JS library integrations. We're Angular fans ourselves, but we know a lot of people use React or Vue, and we want to make sure that using that in DNN with 2Sexy is super, super easy and has a starter package, a brief tutorial, some checklists just to get going. And the inline editing itself, the preview, the image drop, oh, I already mentioned that one. So those are the things we'll work on after what we're doing right now. So that's it. I'm a little out of breath. I hope you like what you saw so far, and now is a great time for Q&A.
Awesome, Daniel, awesome. So I'm just gonna go around here because there were a few points here on the chat. I want to go back to you, Andrew. You had a question about images in the editor.
Yes. So in the editor, you were able to do quick image resizing in the WYSIWYG. What version was that released in? Or has that been there for a while?
For a long time, at least more like 2 years maybe.
Okay. No, that was a really cool feature I didn't know was there, and like for a couple of the module or the apps that I've built in the past, I've always struggled with image resizing. So that's really cool to know that's there.
Yeah. And you can also 50% it, right align it, left align it. Those kind of things are just there.
Okay, I must have missed that. Aderson, can I ask my other question now, or should we go to someone else?
Go ahead.
All right. So you mentioned that you want to do, a headless CMS with this. Now, what does, I asked earlier, what's your plan for .NET Core 3.0 and DNN, as .NET Core 3.0, as far as I understand, is not supporting .NET Framework anymore?
Yeah. So basically, we've built the architecture and we've constantly refactored it through entire years now to make sure that there's as little as possible dependency on the troubling bits, and that includes system.web. So actually, the parts that we connect into that they're very, very narrow. They're just, we have about 20 different Visual Studio projects, and only, I believe, 2 of them actually have a connection to system.web. And so that means we're very confident that we can easily release another version which doesn't need that. The challenging bits, of course, will be more to make sure that things like users and pages still exist, because that's something that Too Sexy uses directly from DNN. And so it'll either need some data sources to pick those up from DNN and use that, or need something to extend that itself. So those are things we're just not sure about yet. But we want to make sure that Too Sexy will, of course, still be in DNN, but also be able to especially produce the final output without needing the heavy DNN in the background.
Gotcha.
Awesome. Steve, you originally were the one, recommending Daniel for the speaker, being, as a speaker. Do you want to go back to your original point there, and have Daniel Aderson that?
Yeah, that'd be great. I've been using DNN for years, and through its various incarnations, and I ran into your stuff pretty early, and I'll be blunt, I was afraid of it. I thought, this looks so different than everything else, and I thought maybe it's too different. I like to stay very vanilla. And then finally I got to a point where I wasn't able to find the right module to do what I wanted, and then I tried your stuff, and then I was a convert. But I still have this feeling of, it feels like it's almost like .NET Nuke is almost irrelevant, for your system. It's sort of like, if you think about how you can, in the old days you'd create skins and containers and all this sort of stuff, all the stuff we struggled with, and fighting against the style sheets and all this sort of stuff, and just you're more than familiar than I am with it. In the early days it was quite awful, and you'd find ways to work around it, and this circumvents everything. But it also seems to like it's because it seems to remove so many of the pain points. I'm just wondering, how does it fit? Like, how do you see it as part of the .NET Nuke system?
Okay, so I think one of the core things is, I think DNN did a lot of things really well and a lot of things terribly. And some of it has to do with the history. Let's just take the containers as an example. Containers used to be a thing in the days where everybody thought they're going to make a bunch of portals that have 7 different panes and all things arranged on a screen, and it was all Yahoo style. And in those days when DNN was made, that seemed like it's going to be the future. And it turned out it was a dumb idea. Also, the thing with the many, many panes, you can still do it, and some people are a fan of it. I'm totally against it because it just doesn't really scale properly in a responsive environment. And so, for example, instead of using panes, our components self-arrange themselves in a list of certain tiles, right? And not using panes the way DNN kind of thought it would be done 10 years ago. So to put it that way, we are actually really trying to ignore features in DNN which we just believe are totally like useless nowadays. Also, the very, very cumbersome edit mode, it's terrible. And yeah, so you're absolutely right. Everything we don't like, we try to circumvent as much as possible. But we're still using a lot of the bits, like whether it's page management and user management, the client dependency framework. So we're still using it as a good engine underneath, but we're trying to skip all the bits that we really think were bad design decisions 10 years ago.
So I guess in some ways, if I look at some of the sites I've done and have right now, they're kind of Frankenstein-like, because I've got some panes on the page and I've got your stuff in there, and so in some ways I might be better to say, hey, this let's use Too Sexy to do my layout, basically.
So that's how we see it, especially because, again, the entire responsive topic is really a very complex subject of its own. But letting a user arrange things in panes doesn't work, at least not if he shouldn't be shooting himself in the foot. I mean, he can do it, and if he's really, really good, he will also not fuck up. But that's actually not the kind of editor we usually have. Our editors are usually simple people, and they just want to put things in there and have it look okay and not worry about anything else. And that's not possible if you use a lot of panes, for example.
So how do you see things evolving in terms of .NET Nuke and your stuff, just as from a design philosophy point of view?
Yeah. So let's put it this way, at least DNN is almost clean nowadays that we can use almost anything we want to. So at least the output page can be almost any HTML nowadays that it needs to be. And so whether you then are a fan of some kind of material framework or CSS framework, etc., that is one part of the design topic. And I think we're at the point where DNN doesn't hurt us anymore because we can do anything we want to. And then there's their entire UI topic. And that's, in my opinion, just DNN, at least they did a very big step by removing the UIs from the normal pages by putting them on overlays. So that helped a lot. But at least the in-page editing experience in DNN is terrible. And in my humble opinion, just completely useless. It doesn't serve a real business case because it makes it look nice. You even sometimes have inline editing directly, which makes it appear as if it's useful, but it's still not. So I think the way we're going right now, we're going to extend on that even more and have even more in-page editing, but it has to flow. It has to be Ajax. It has to feel right, and it has to be smart.
So if I was to go start a project from scratch today, and I want to use TwoSexy in the most effective way, I'd really be looking at essentially the view, what the users see, what my client sees would all be TwoSexy, rather than panes and containers and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I right now I'm doing some awful stuff where I'm throwing bootstrap stuff in the middle of panes, and it's just gross. And
yeah. And the cool thing about this, right, is also, I mean, I'm not sure if I showed this before, but I can also immediately, if I'm the editor, and I'm like, oh, I have this 3-pane layout, and maybe I don't like this. Maybe I want a different one. Maybe I'd rather have this kind of a layout, right? This is something a user can immediately switch back and forth between, or maybe he says, oh, I'd rather have the icon version of the list, for example. Or no, let's go back to the pictures anyways. This is the kind of a design decision a user would like to have. And you as the creator can say, these are the options you have, and you can make sure that these options are good.
Well, that's quite helpful, because I think I've been not using your software to its full benefit, because I've been still treating it like you're a module sort of, and it's much more than that.
Cool.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Steven. Again, I hope that you got your points addressed here as much as possible, you know. Daniel, I do have a question. So I have a tendency whenever I see a tool, whatever it is, maybe a more technical tool or maybe a more user-friendly tool, to try to see how, to try to see that tool with a beginner's eye, It's very hard to do when you are deeply involved for so many years, like you have been, and myself as well. So if we try here for a second to put our, beginner's eye here in front of us, and it's hard, but I think it's hard, but how would someone get started with TwoSexy? I mean, what would be, step 1, 2, 3 that they should take? Is, again, I'll let you address that.
Okay. So basically you're asking what would a beginner do? And here's just one minor problem. There are at least 2 kinds of beginners. Some of them do not even know DNN. And that, like, I've even had questions on the DNN store saying, oh, I just downloaded your module. How do I install it? And if you're at that level, then you should at least learn those bits first. But basically, I would say what happens is this. If I would go, let me try. I'm actually not used to the German UI myself. The websites are here, I believe.
Let's assume for a second that the beginner I'm talking about, they know about DNN, and maybe I still think that there are two types of beginners that might be using, too sexy. The beginner that use the solution out of the box, and the beginner that wants to the beginner coder, that wants to dig deeper into that. So maybe you break them down, like that.
Yeah. So basically, if let's say somebody has a running DNN already, and he's installed the module. Let me just see, I just made a site here briefly. Then here's what I believe is the typical experience. But again, this requires somebody to already know DNN at the very basic level. And I guess here it's having some wonderful delays getting the first page up from this new portal. Hope I didn't do anything wrong. So, I mean, this is kind of like what people would typically see when they start. And one minor thing just to mention, this all looks like it is easy to do, but it's terrible. Like if you try to edit this block here, you need to write HTML, even though it looks like it's WYSIWYG, it's simply not. But basically, if somebody has any kind of a page set up, and let's just say he's configured it properly, that it looks nice. Here we have some different demo themes. And let's say this is like the first time he's been working with this. The first thing I think he should do, independent of Too Sexy, is to make sure he's installed a clean theme. Because without that, things are just terrible. And what he should do then, let me see if I can just delete these things here.
Hey, Daniel, what would you describe as a clean theme? Would it just be something that does the menu and have one pane?
So that is my preferred solution. And ideally, it should be a Bootstrap 3 or Bootstrap 4 theme that is correctly built. It could be our instant theme. It could be something different. And let me just, this is a setup that I'm not really used to because, yeah, I don't usually work this way, but I have to quickly just get rid of the trash here. But because if he starts with a messy theme, and here I would really like to include a lot of the themes you can get on the store. A lot of them are built in this old idea where, yeah, you just have all these panes. And if he starts that way, he's probably never going to get out of that, let's say, hell that those panes construct for you, because he's going to start saying, okay, I have this one on top, then 3 in a row, then another one below. And then if he installs Too Sexy, and this is what I want to show, is the first thing he does, he will get a dialog which will tell him to auto-configure it. And for almost anybody that gets started, I would hit this button. Just install the default packages. This just takes a few seconds. And once he's done this, he can now immediately start doing things like add basic content, and it'll already look great because it automatically styled everything correctly, because the theme told it Too Sexy through Koi that it's using Bootstrap 4, and he can now start editing things and doing things exactly the way I just did before, and he doesn't have to worry about a lot of this stuff. It just works. Okay, I'd like to have these picture links. I'd like to add another one. And he can just work in this and start setting it up. And then when he says, okay, gosh, but I would like whatever, this picture to be square, for example, well, then he can start working in the HTML, doing some things here, changing the H3 to an H4, etc. And this is what I would recommend to get started, is first just try out the things that are included. because they are really well thought through, and then customize it to your needs. That's what I would recommend.
Awesome. That's good. That's what I was getting to see how can someone with a fresh perspective would get this going. That's good. Thank you, Daniel, for that.
Cool.
Okay. Anybody else? Anybody else have any questions for Daniel here? Nope. Okay.
Yep.
Okay, go ahead.
Aderson, can you hear me?
Yes, I can, Jason.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Oh, okay. All right. Yeah, just about reusing content. Like if you have a larger site and you want to reuse content through it, is that still possible and easy to do, I would assume? But
Sure, no problem. I'll just make a fairly stupid example here, but let me you can still see my screen, right?
yeah.
Okay, so I'm gonna type in something here, a blah, blah, some description. I'm going to add the picture again. Let me just pick an icon as well, just in case we would want to make it look like it has an icon. And now I have it in here. Let's say over here I want to reuse it. Then I can always insert an existing item of the same type, of course. So I can now say I would like to have the blah blah here as well, and that's it. And of course, this is not just because it's on this page. I can do that on any other page as well. And so that's this content idea, right? The user says, I want to have this right here. He doesn't say, I want a list of links and they should be sorted by this criteria. No, he wants to build the page, and that's what it does.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you.
Awesome, Daniel. Good, very good, very good. So again, any more questions there? Okay, I'll give you one, I'll give you two, and I'll give you three chances. Okay, nobody else? Okay, crickets, that's good. Okay, Daniel, and that's awesome, awesome. Thank you for taking the time to do this. I know it's 2 a.m. your time, so you must have someone, people waking up around you close by. So again, thank you very much, Daniel. I know that this is of course recorded. It will be shared, and I know that this will be a great reference for anyone that may want to get exposed to sex content. That, to be honest, sometimes then I find a bit there's so much that I can do that at times I find myself a bit intimidated by approaching it. That's my feeling. Again, I might be completely wrong here, but it's just a feeling that I wanted to describe to you. But that's the reason why my question: if someone is starting, now, where do they start from? And that's why my question. But again, great tool. We cannot deny of having 20% of the DNN sites out there using such a great tool. And again, thank you so much for the time you have invested as a company, as an individual, to build this tool, to get this, and sharing this. And I mean, it's really something, it's a huge contribution to the community. I cannot thank you enough for that, on behalf of the community, on behalf of DNN, for all the years of dedication that you guys have put in place, you and your team as well. Okay?
Yep, I'll forward that.
Awesome. Okay, I'm gonna take back here the presentation so we can wrap things up. Let me see here. Make me presenter. Let me see. Okay, share. Let me see if I share that. Great. So, once again, Daniel, thank you so much. I hope that you have a good rest of the night there for you. And that's it, everyone. Next month, we have gone through questions or crickets already. We have some crickets there. Thank you very much for being here. We will be back in a month with a new presenter. So by the 3rd of April, we should be back. I'm trying to secure a nice speaker for us. Most likely, actually, he confirmed today, it will be Lee Wise. He'll be talking about theming and what you can do with that. He's a great designer, great themer. So we're gonna be talking about themes on our next meetup in a month. Thank you very much. Have a good one. Have a good rest of March. Hopefully we'll be going to better weather in a month. Thank you very much. Bye for now.
Thank you. Bye-bye.